Hello everybody, welcome back into another video. If you do not know me, my name is Sin, and earlier this week I had the absolute pleasure of playtesting Assassin's Creed Shadows for 4 hours and finally got the time to sit down, record this video so we can talk about it. I've got a lot to say as far as the characters go, the play styles go, the things that I experienced during my gameplay, and especially I want to talk about the historical context of which this game is set, because one question that came up when I was trying to figure out what topics people would be interested in from my playthrough, what I could talk about, was people obviously want to know, does this feel like the original Assassin's Creed franchise? And from my opinion, it does, and here's why. Because I haven't played the RPG games, okay? My experience with Assassin's Creed is I played the very first one at release with my brother, and then from that point on, I played all of the other Assassin's Creed games on my own, well up into Unity and Syndicate. So I basically stopped playing the moment Origins was released. And that was not intentional. It wasn't because I wasn't interested in Origins or Odyssey or Valhalla. That's just how it happened. I just didn't buy the game, and then I just didn't buy the 2 games that came after Origins. So I don't have any experience with the RPGs, but what made me fall in love with the original franchise was the history that the game really dug itself into, and those historical characters, and being able to play through historical events and having Assassin's Creed tell its own version of those human events, those historical events, in a way that suited the franchise, and it grounded the characters really well in the events that were going on around them. And that is one big reason that I am so excited for Assassin's Creed Shadows, and I want to talk about the history and the time period of which the game is set, because I think that there is a lot of potential here, and it makes me really excited for characters like Yasuke, one of our 2 main characters, because really diving into the time period of which this game is set really explains why Yasuke is a perfect main character for the storyline and the story that I think Assassin's Creed Shadows is trying to tell. So, without further ado, let's jump into the history, and then we'll jump into the characters and the gameplay, and I'll try to make it as quick as possible for you guys. But let's jump into it. So first, let's talk a little bit about the history of this time period, why it's so interesting, and why I think it makes the perfect backdrop for an Assassin's Creed game, and also why it validates every reason why Yasuke needs to be the main character, one of the 2 main characters of this story, because he, as a historical figure, fits in so well with the story that I think Assassin's Creed Shadows is trying to tell, and let me explain. So Assassin's Creed Shadows takes place in 1579, which is the height of the Warring States period in the Goku period. This is a time of rampant military conflict where the daimyos, the regional warlords, are vying for power, territory. There is significant instability, and there is one person who stands above the rest in this group of squabbling warlords. The man in question is Oda Nobunaga, considered one of the great unifiers of Japan, the head of the Oda clan, a very powerful daimyo in his own right, and the man who decided in the 1560s that he was going to wage war against the other daimyos in order to unify Japan. He is also accredited with overthrowing the Ashikaga shogunate in 1573, so a full 6 years before the main events of the game take place, if I am correct. So obviously a very important person in Japanese history. His actions mark this volatile and pivotal moment in Japanese history where we are in between shogunates. We are in a power vacuum. The Ashikaga have been dismantled, but we are not yet ready for the Tokugawa shogunate to take hold. So Warring States period, obviously the daimyos are at each other's throats, they're vying for land, they're vying for power, and Oda Nobunaga is kind of leading the march as the most powerful daimyo of the group, and he does so with the help of one of his most trusted samurai, Yasuke. That is how Yasuke comes into play with this, and that is honestly how Yasuke is honestly an unavoidable historical figure when it comes to talking about this specific time period, especially if we're getting this close to Oda Nobunaga. When Yasuke first arrived in Japan, he was brought there by a Christian delegation and then later found himself in the employment of Lord Nobunaga. And that all goes to say that I do think Yasuke is a very strong main character for the story we are trying to tell here, with the height of the Warring States period, making decisions that are going to shape the future of Japan, leading into the Tokugawa shogunate and all the stability that came from that, especially after the Sengoku period. It's going to be very interesting to see that through the eyes of Yasuke, who was employed by, once again, Oda Nobunaga, and get to see the progression of society and these periods as we go through the world. And it adds another layer to the fact that even though he is a samurai, he does speak Japanese, he's still an outsider in a lot of ways, which is where Naoe comes in. I absolutely adore Naoe. Don't get me wrong, I like Yasuke, but I absolutely adore Naoe. I love the way she plays. I love her character. She is a traditional shinobi. She was raised, I assume, in a shinobi family in this way of life. That's all she's ever known. That is her code of honor that she grew up with as a konoichi, a female shinobi. And she has all those tools available to her, and her gameplay is just so fun, in my opinion. I'm not going to go into a lot about her backstory because being able to play through the prologue and get to know her and her motivations a little bit better are half of the fun, with Yasuke as well. But Naoe adds a different element, just like Yasuke does, because Naoe was born into that traditional shinobi family. She was raised in this lifestyle. She is obviously Japanese. She's going to have a deeper tie to the culture, a deeper tie to the people. And I'm going to be very interested to see if those two ever have conflict because of the differences in the way they might view the world, an outsider to Japan whose loyalty is to Japan but still an outsider, versus Naoe, someone who was raised in one of those traditional fighting families. So it's going to be very interesting overall, and I think their gameplay, their split gameplay, very much characterizes them very well. So I'm sure you probably have already seen this by now, but Yasuke and Naoe play completely different roles in your gameplay style, and I, for one, really enjoy this. I like having the options here because Yasuke is this big samurai. Like, he is a massive guy by your average Japanese male standards. He's just towering over people. So his brute strength really is the crux of his combat style, and it's very fun to play as. You have more health, you have more stability, you have attacks like kicking someone to send them flying and knocking them down, using your brute strength to your advantage. He can even use his strength and momentum to run through locked doors to get through them. So there's a lot of fun to be had in his play style. It's definitely different for me personally because no matter what game I'm playing, I will always gravitate more towards stealth or more towards a nimble play style. So he does move naturally stiffer than Naoe does, but I say naturally because, once again, he is a large man in a large suit of armor. He is not going to be as nimble and quick as this petite shinobi. So I do like the differences in their fighting styles, and because of those differences and because of what I personally like in gameplay, I did spend more time playing as Naoe and trying out her different weapons and play styles. Naoe is definitely going to be more of your traditional Assassin's Creed archetype character because she is a shinobi, she is trained in those fighting styles, the stealth style that we are kind of used to, and she's a lot of fun to play as. She's very nimble, she climbs very quickly, she has a grappling hook, which you can also throw out, hang from, and assassinate someone that way, almost Spider-Man style, which was very fun. The climbing can be a little iffy at times, I'll be completely honest. I feel like I've always had issues with Assassin's Creed parkour here and there. For me, it just takes a little while to get accustomed to things and kind of be able to gauge in my brain how the AI, the climbing AI, is going to react, so I adjust over time, kind of like driving someone else's car. I've always had that issue with Assassin's Creed games. I think the only one that didn't posed that issue for me was Syndicate and Unity. They had really good parkour mechanics, but it's kind of back to I'm having to learn how the game wants you to climb and wants you to interact with things, because I found myself dropping from rooftops when I didn't want to, or going around the wrong way, or not climbing directly in the direction that I wanted to be in. Little things like that that I need to get accustomed to. Maybe other people had this issue, but I feel like just my experience with old Assassin's Creed games, I've always had a little bit of a learning curve with some of the climbing elements. I think we've all had an issue where we tried to climb upward and accidentally jumped off the side of the wall or something. I think it's happened to everyone at least once. But Naoe's a very fun character. She's very nimble. She's like a cat in her movements. The way that she does interact with those parkour elements when you hit them is very fluid, and it's very satisfying to watch. I do love her fighting style. She is a lot quicker than Yasuke, obviously, but she does have less health. That is something to keep in mind. She is a stealth character at her core, so if you get ganged up on, you're not going to be able to fight them off as easily as you would if you were playing as Yasuke. She does have some tools under her belt to help with those types of things. She does have traditional shinobi tools. She does have the sword, the tanto. I personally found a lot of love with the sarigama. It is this sickle chain combo. It's a traditional weapon. It looks very cool. It allows for a wide range of attacks, and I think that's why I like it, because it allows you to hit multiple enemies at once with its weapon kit, which can once again be very helpful if you are getting ganged up on. But I will say, I did have more success using the sword versus the sarigama when it comes to actually landing my attacks and landing killing blows, the perfect dodges and the perfect parries. Something about the sword's weapon kit worked better for my brain, because I would use the exact same timings, like the muscle memory timings for the sword and the sarigama, and I would have more success with the sword, whereas with the sarigama I was missing a lot of my parry and dodge cues. And I don't know if that's just me, or if it's something having to do with the weapon kits and maybe the timing windows of those different weapons. It's something I'll have to test out, but it is something I wanted to throw out there. She does have throwing knives, kunai at her disposal. You do have bells that you can toss out in order to get guards to go in one direction so that you can go in another or assassinate someone. One thing I will point out that I did not like is the smoke bombs. Smoke bombs work differently than what they used to, and I am upset about it. And maybe I'm misremembering this. Maybe I'm seeing it through rose-colored glasses, and someone can tell me if I am. I remember smoke bombs working in the sense of you throw it down, massive cloud of smoke. If you have the right upgrades, you can easily get off 4 to 5 assassinations while everyone's confused in the smoke and they can't see you, and it still counts as an assassination. Or you throw it down and you can easily escape out of the line of sight and lose your notoriety, and then you're suddenly anonymous again and you can go out on your way. Smoke bombs don't work like that anymore. The output of the smoke bomb is very small, and it's very, well, it's not small, it's very precise, and it feels like the weapon tool is more for the sake of putting a little bit of distance between you and your enemy, not necessarily for the sake of running away or for getting an assassination off in one easy go. But if you are overcrowded, or you need to heal, or you need to think of another tactic for how to win a fight, you throw down a smoke bomb, people are distracted for like half a second, and it gives you that window to maybe try to escape or to think of something else. It does not feel as honestly useful as what smoke bombs used to feel in my memory, and I'm a little bit upset about that. Maybe they can be upgraded. I didn't check. Maybe they can be upgraded. If so, that's going to be one of the first things I do, because I love smoke bombs. They make my life easier. They should make all our lives easier. So yeah, that is one teeny tiny gripe that I definitely have from what I have seen and played so far. One element that has definitely changed that I would like to talk about is the map and traversal style. It definitely feels different from the OGs, but I enjoy it because it really feels grounded to me. So let's say you climb up to an eagle eye point of view area and you look around. Every point of interest that will show up on your map is based on what you see and what points of interest you can physically see. So buildings, temples, things off in the distance in the mountains, whatever you can physically see, that is when the game will give you a question mark to identify that area as a point of interest. And when it comes to the missions, I actually found this to be very cool. When you are given a new part of a mission and told to go somewhere, you don't immediately get a map marker to go to that specific area. You're given details about where to go, and then based off those environment clues, you have to find your location, which I actually think is really fun. So how this would play out is if we were on a mission and we were going from point A to point B, they would say, oh, point B is in the northern part of this city state, but it's in the southeast part of the actual city, and it's a temple, so you know to look for a temple in this city in the southeastern district. It's clues like that, and when you're unsure, you can send one of your scouts and it'll ping them in wherever you sit them down at, and it'll have kind of a ripple that comes off of them. And if your objective is within that ripple, if you pinged it correctly, then the actual map marker showing you exactly where your mission is will pop up. So you can either use your allies to your advantage, or you can go and look for these things yourselves. It's really up to you. But I found this to be very grounded and a very fun way of using allies and spies and really bringing back that element of, I hate to say building a brotherhood because I know that's not terminology we would use anymore, but being such a big fan of Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood, I think of it in the sense of brotherhood. So I think that's a really fun element. Another fun element that I did not get to test, but I'm very excited for, is being able to kind of build out my homestead, my home base, my headquarters. And I saw a little bit of that, but I didn't get to play too far into it, and I'm very excited to see exactly how customizable those areas are. So definitely going to be something I'm going to be looking into as we are playing through the game. Another important thing I got to point out, you can't pet that cat. You can pet that cat and you can pet that dog, and there's wildlife painting. Okay, I'm an animal person. I have to point this out. One of the fun little side things you can do that'll pop up on your map marker is, let's say there's this beautiful crane that is fishing in the river. You can go into prone and you can sneak up on the crane, and when you get close enough, you can interact with it, and it'll allow you to paint a traditional oil painting of the crane. So I painted like 2 cranes, a deer, a koi pond. It's just something that is really fun, and I adore it because it taps into the fact that Japanese culture is extremely interesting, and I got to see a little bit of this in the part of the main mission that I played that I would love to talk about, because I got asked when I was gathering general cues about my playthrough, what did I enjoy most? And it was definitely the elements of Japanese culture that were placed in and just enriched the storytelling, and this was one of them. So even though a lot of the interest in Japanese history obviously stems from samurai and shinobi and the shogunate and these great military powers and these military thinkers, there was this belief that thinking about nature and participating in the arts was very grounding to the mind and the body, and would help make you a better soldier if you took part in poetry or painting or music. Believing in the arts and centering the mind, the body, and the soul would make you a better warrior. So I absolutely love seeing things like that included. There's a point where you get to take part in a ringakai, or I think it's just called a ringa. Anyway, it's community poetry. So lords would get together before war rooms, before they would go and talk about trade deals or how they were going to conquer another city-state. They would get together and do community haikus where they were given a topic, and one person would start it and the other would continue it, and this communal poetry between these warlords would settle the mind and the soul before they went on to think about their military tactics. It was things that are interesting like that, and that's why I absolutely love the painting aspect as well, because with everything that's going on with the characters, you really do just get to take a moment and take in nature and paint that portrait of that crane or that mother deer with her baby fawn. And it's, as an animal lover, I adore it, but also as someone who studied history for a very long time, I understand why it's important and why characters like Yasuke and Naoe would stop what they were doing to appreciate the power of nature. It really is beautiful. It's a really fun add-in. Overall, I had a great time with my 4-hour preview of the game. There were some minor hiccups. Of course, I've already talked about the fact I don't like the way smoke bombs work now. With the climbing, the parkour, I did have a little bit of issue. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Parkour in Assassin's Creed games to me sometimes feel like driving your friend's car you're not familiar with. You kind of just have to take time to gauge and learn what the car will and will not do. So I do believe that I will get more seamless with the parkour as I sit down and can play the game longer from beginning to end. But I did have some hiccups with falling off rooftops when I didn't want to, or not being able to seamlessly jump off of a structure like I would like to. A little bit of climbing issues here and there. But once again, that could easily just be me. It's a learning curve thing for me. It always has been, except for Syndicate and Unity. Those were the only two that I felt like I was really strong in from the very beginning. When it comes to their play styles, I definitely feel like I'm going to lean a lot more towards Naoe. I love the way her character plays. I love her weapons, but I do want to also give Yasuke his chance and play his character as well, because one reason, once again, why I love the fact that he is included as another one of your main characters is because of where he sits in history, being the retainer of Oda Nobunaga and having that relationship with the great unifier, the man who kind of in some way set off the Warring States period and definitely led to that period of time where we were in between shogunates. So he will have such an interesting point of view given his history, and I'm very excited to see where that goes. I just don't play brute style characters myself, but I will play him for the sake of the story. But Naoe really does have my heart with the way her weapons work. And you can, once again, I don't know if I've mentioned this or not, switch very seamlessly in between the two. So don't even be worried about that if that's a concern. When I was playing through the main story bit that I got to play through, it was very easy to go from one character to the other. Every time there's a major decision that happens during a mission, the game pauses and gives you the option to decide if you want to continue with Yasuke or if you want to continue with Naoe. I think the last mission that I did asked me 3 times who I wanted to play as for different parts of the mission, and that really will determine, do you want to go into this area head on, knock the door down, go in with brute force, or do you want to find a more sneaky, quick way in? So it really is just going to come down to your play style and perhaps even your tactics. If you think that you're going to have an easier time playing as Yasuke during this portion than Naoe, maybe that's how some of you will decide when to switch off characters. So I think there is going to be some really interesting variety in the gameplay and the choices here. And I'm not going to talk about the story, but I am very invested in what I have seen so far, and I'm very excited for what is to come with Assassin's Creed Shadows. This is very much an Ask Me Anything forum. If there is something that I have not covered that you would like to know, you can leave a comment on it down below and I will answer it as quickly as I can. Or if you want to follow along my journey playing Assassin's Creed Shadows, definitely follow the channel, ring the bell, leave a comment, like the video, do all that jazz, because we will be doing a full-length gameplay of Assassin's Creed Shadows when it fully releases. And that'll be all from me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you'll join me again, and I'll be seeing you guys very soon for Assassin's Creed Shadows.